What's up, Taiwan? I'm Sandy Chi with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, capping off the official's two-day visit to India. The two agreed to reduce tensions along their shared border. Wang also confirmed that Modi accepted China's invitation to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin at the end of the month. It would be his first visit to China in 7 years. But Wang's trip was not without some controversy, notably around the topic of Taiwan. Following Wang's meeting with India Foreign Minister on Monday, China issued a statement citing the minister as saying Taiwan is a part of China. But India's foreign ministry says there is no change in its position on Taiwan. Taiwan's foreign ministry says China is trying to mislead the international community. This is Wang's second trip to India since a deadly border clash in 2020. For more on the Chinese readout of Wang Yi's meeting with his Indian counterpart, Alec MacDonald spoke with Sana Hashmi, coordinator of India-Taiwan Dialogue at the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation.
China's readout from the foreign ministers' meeting has stated that India had stated Taiwan is a part of China. However, this differs from the Indian version, which said that there was no change in the relationship between Taiwan and India. So why is there a difference and what does it signify?
We all have always seen that there has been a difference in statements and readout that have come out of China and other countries. But with India, it was not really a norm, and Taiwan was never a part of the discussion, specifically publicly. So there are a number of reasons why this happened. First, as in we have already seen that the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, they've already clarified that, of course, not in so many words, but this is what they implied, that they never said that Taiwan is a part of China. So, in fact, the Indian readout actually mentions that the Chinese side mentioned Taiwan and they urge India not to engage with Taiwan, but India's position has been that Taiwan is an important economic technology partner. So there is definitely a denial of what China said in the readout. So why they did it, as in, of course, and they didn't really do it in the English readout initially. They did it in the Chinese Mandarin version of the readout. So this was primarily aimed at the domestic audience as well as for the people in Taiwan.
If India-China ties were to thaw at all, would there be an impact on the relationship between India and Taiwan?
So even if India-China relations, if we have to say it, they become cordial, they become normalized again, even if there's a huge transformation in the relationship, I do not really think that it is going to have any impact on India-Taiwan relations. And why I'm saying it, because India has never used Taiwan as a card against China. India was not really cozying up to Taiwan because of the differences with China. India was reaching out to Taiwan primarily because it understood, it acknowledged that Taiwan could be a key economic and technological partner. So I think that was the entire rationale behind India's outreach to Taiwan. And this is not going to change just because India-China relations are going to be normalized and going to, if there is going to be a reset in the relationships.
What would it mean for the wider Asia-Pacific region if India and China were to come closer on economy or trade?
So these meetings and, Prime Minister meeting and going to China in a couple of days is not about engaging with the Chinese. First of all, it's about being present in the multilateral forum. And secondly, it's about how to secure India's interest when there is a rift with the US and when the US is not very much present in the region. So, I think that, of course, Indo-Pacific is important and the countries in the region are absolutely holding the fort. They are cooperating, engaging bilaterally and at the regional levels vanish. But of course, what we need and what is more critical is that the US continued presence in the region, which is sadly not there. So in the absence of the US presence, what the countries could do is to ensure that the region is stabilized, the region is peaceful. And how do we do it? Of course, there is more cooperation among the like-minded countries, but also to minimize tensions with China is one of the ways to go about it. So I think this is exactly what countries such as India, Australia, and even Japan to some extent is doing.
That was Sana Hashmi from the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. Leaders and diplomats trying to end the Russia-Ukraine war are busy working out what security guarantees for Kyiv will look like. However, there are few details so far. Meanwhile, work to set up a peace summit between Russia and Ukraine's presidents shows signs of progress, with ideas floating about where they might meet. John Van Triest has this update.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you? Good to see you.
At Tuesday's White House press briefing, journalists were eager to find out what exactly the United States' plan for Ukraine might be. U.S. President Donald Trump has said the U.S. will help assure Ukraine's security as part of a peace deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war. But he's ruled out sending U.S. troops to Ukraine, and in an interview with Fox News, suggested some kind of air support instead. So what might this security assurance look like? So far, the details are sparse.
You made clear no U.S. boots on the ground. Is the president considering U.S. boots in the air as a form of a security guarantee?
Look, that was something the president mentioned on his interview this morning. It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal. I'll let him do that. I can tell you he's definitively ruled out boots on the ground.
For now, there's mostly speculation, perhaps more air defense systems for Kyiv, or some kind of no-fly zone with U.S. enforcement. The picture of what peace guarantees from Kyiv's European allies and Canada might look like is equally unclear. As expressed at this Nordic-Canadian foreign ministers meeting, talks are still at such an early stage that no details are worked out yet.
What comes to troops to Ukraine, my colleagues are, of course, welcome to comment, but I can speak on all of our behalf to the extent that we have started the work within the Coalition of the Willing framework, and there have been no decisions thus far as what comes to the overall framework and neither to the individual contributions.
But this doesn't mean there's not yet work underway to bring this war to an end. One issue being worked out is where Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky might hold talks. Budapest, Hungary is one option, and U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken to Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban about the idea. Since Hungary has good ties with Russia, it's one of the few places Putin could travel to without worries about arrest under international criminal court charges over the Ukraine war. And even if Ukraine doesn't agree to Hungary, there are other possible venues. Both Austria and Switzerland have offered to let Putin onto their territory for peace talks. Geneva seems like a promising candidate.
As I explained earlier, the Federal Council has already defined the legal situation. It delved deeply into this matter last year. It defined the procedures and rules, and it outlined the framework for, let's say, granting immunity to a person under an international arrest warrant if that person comes for a peace conference. Not if they come for private reasons, etc., but for reasons of peace, thanks to the efforts of Switzerland and International Geneva.
A flurry of recent activity, including meetings between Trump and Putin and Trump and Zelensky, hasn't stopped the war in Ukraine from grinding on. But there are signs, if not of a breakthrough, then at least of progress ahead. Fu Huahong and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
The U.S. Commerce Department is working on a plan to take equity in Intel and other tech firms that received funding under the CHIPS Act.
As for this 10% government stake deal, the Department of Commerce continues to work on it. It's a creative idea that has never been done before to ensure that we're both reshoring these critical supply chains while also gaining something of it for the American taxpayer.
Former U.S. President Joe Biden signed the CHIPS Act into law in 2022, but much of its grant funding has not been dispersed. In an interview on CNBC, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed that the government is considering a deal that would convert these grants to non-voting shares. A 10% stake in Intel would make the U.S. government the firm's largest shareholder. Other companies that received CHIPS Act funding include Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung. As Taiwan prepares to vote on whether to restart its last nuclear plant, people on both sides of the debate are holding public rallies.
但是这些核能复兴都还没有在数据上或在产业规模下真正落实，它可能更多的像是我们可以说在这个金融投资里面的一些投资的，不管是公关宣传词也好，政治宣传词也好。那现在的现况，其实在国际上再生能源才是真正趋势，而不是核能了。
Supporters of nuclear power have been out in force too. Opposition Taiwan People's Party Chair Huang Kuo-chang says nuclear is key to Taiwan's national security, adding that Japan is looking to keep nuclear as a key part of its energy mix. Voters will cast their ballots on Saturday. The prestigious Michelin Guide has published its top restaurants picks for Taiwan for 2025.
Nearly 60% of the newly selected restaurants have opened in the past 18 months, illustrating how Taiwan's culinary scene, despite global economic uncertainty, continues to innovate, adapt, and lead.
Only 3 restaurants took home the top 3-star award, all top prize winners last year. This edition marks 8 years since the Michelin Guide began evaluating eateries in Taiwan. The 2025 guide also looked at 3 new cities.
除了台北、台中、台南、高雄以外，我们新增加了新台北、新北市跟新竹县市，总共有7个城市共同来参与这次米其林的评选。
None of the restaurants added to the guide in those places received any stars. An agricultural co-op is working to spread the word about Pingtung County's quality chocolate while cutting down the carbon dioxide its growers emit. John Van Triest has the story from Taiwan's cocoa capital.
Huang Zhaoying inspects the cocoa pods growing in her orchard in Pingtung County in southern Taiwan. It's early in the season and there's still damage from last year's typhoons, but Huang isn't worried. Thanks to the local farmers co-op she's joined, the pods are bigger and healthier than ever, and there's no need to worry about marketing.
土质是酸性还是怎样哈？看要用什么肥，它会有跟你验土，就感觉果实有比较大。
Chocolate is something of a specialty in this part of Taiwan, and that's in part thanks to the co-op's chair, Qiu Junyu. Qiu has been in cocoa for a decade, and he's seen the crop's ups and especially its downs. A few years ago, farmers were cutting down their cacao trees as they failed to find buyers. Now his co-op helps give Pingtung's chocolate a bigger profile and find a bigger market. Around a quarter of Pingtung's 62 hectares of cocoa fields now has an annual contract with the co-op. Cocoa is a complicated business, but here each step is carefully organized. Once a week, cocoa pods come in from the farms. The co-op does quality control and then begins a precise process of fermentation that can take up to 2 weeks. Beans must be carefully turned so they get the right amount of sun exposure and meet the criteria for sale.
晒透的，如我哋爱囤伊的水分含量降到7.8以下，也让它符合国际的一个标准安尼。所以今刚我哋一个步骤路尽量容易跟太阳接触，我们酿一些比较小的次级品的，我哋会推脱起来安尼。
But quality isn't this co-op's only concern. To give its products an edge, it's going green. Standard chocolate production emits 17 to 19 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of product. The co-op has this down to 7 kilograms and wants to push things even further. Last July, it got Taiwan's first carbon label for Pingtung cocoa. That certification didn't come easy, as one local official with a passion for the cocoa business attests.
所有嘅 data 資料全部係嘅，佢就對我哋咧天度嘅佢是盤到我哋咧calculate出來，講到成排啦，到100排，冇相同嘅我用嘅天水，特別用嘅天嘅種類，甲我去盤查，包括我哋奶肉地杯所下嘅皮料，全部甲我盤出來。 到後面要嘢成命過程要唔同，送出去用埋嘅菜，就強下送出去，用埋嘅資料做包裝。
But with climate change concern a growing factor in what people buy, these farmers and their co-op think they've hit on a plan to boost local agriculture and put chocolate from Taiwan's southern tip on a bigger stage. Joseph Wu and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Visit TaiwanPlus.com for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, fans at a German zoo bid farewell to Tony the hippo, who's moving to France. I'm Sani Chi. Take care and see you next time.